Hi, my name is Val Smithson. After several readings of Pete Hendrickson's amazing book, Cracking the Code, in 2004, I filed a proper refund claim return for the year 2002. For the first time in my life, I lawfully rebutted an erroneous information statement and knowingly attested to the accuracy and truthfulness of my return. Shortly thereafter, I received a complete refund of all the federal withholdings taken from my pay for the year 2002. And for each year since then, each proper CtC educated return that I have filed has renewed my dignity as an American citizen. I encourage you to read Pete's book several times if necessary. Learn to read and understand the law for yourself, and then apply the principles of law that apply to you. If you don't read Cracking the Code to learn how to know which provisions of the law apply to you, then you most likely are being subjected to provisions of law that do not lawfully apply to you. That is what inevitably happens when we're ignorant of the law. And ignorance is not bliss when you realize that all the property you have turned over to the government didn't need to be because you didn't take the time and effort to learn and understand what the law really says. So please get Pete's book, read it, study the law, and then knowledgeably reclaim your rights and property under that law as they apply to you.
First got started putting to print his thoughts, which he had been developing over many previous years, when he had finished doing the research, when he was one of the first people to search the newly digitized code. He was one of the first people to say, hey, there's now 3.5 million words I can search. It was, I think, the year 2000 or something. And he went in and he started searching for keywords. When he began turning up the results that you see in his book, I said, you know, Pete, that's very interesting. I don't have the time to dissect what your thesis is. I don't have time to cross-check it against, you know, anything else related. So I said, come back to me maybe after a few years and after a few dozen people have successfully used it, because I just didn't have time to be bothered. But, you know, I'm interested from the sidelines. Well, now it's multi-years later, and he has many hundreds and hundreds and thousands. The hundreds and thousands are known. The tens of thousands are not known to us, but they no doubt exist, because the ordinary person receiving a refund is not going to send their name and the picture of their refund check into a third party like Pete, unless something really, you know, it's a much bigger movement than meets the eye. So I suspect there's a big number, and who knows what that is. But what's on in print, what's been forwarded to him is considerable. And he's not an author of just one book. He's an author of more than one book, and another one that I have on my shelf is titled Upholding the Law. That's Pete. Pete is a thoroughgoing law upholder, and he is a strict logician. He is someone who pretty much builds if he's going to build a house around a concept, it'll be a brick house. It's not made out of straw. He has everything covered. And when I looked deeper and deeper into his claims on this one matter about upholding the law, the tax law, again, he has essays on 25 or 30 different other elements of the law that are breathtakingly, they're spectacular forays into clear-headed thinking. But in this one area on taxes, I kept expecting at some point I would find, on my own reconnaissance, I thought I would be sure to find something that would run contrary. And to this day, I have not found anything. All I found is repeated confirmations, repeated buttressing, and on the other side, on the IRS side, there is, I know that between 1913 and 1941, a maximum, in any given year, there's a maximum number of Americans that paid income tax during that entire generation leading into World War II. 28 years, 29 years continuous. No more than 8% of the public, and an average of more like 5% of the public, ever filed or paid an income tax return in any given year. At the height of the Depression, when the government really needed money, it maxed out at 8%. The year of Pearl Harbor, 1941, again, 8%. Then there's another little related element that comes into the picture in 1942. The year after Pearl Harbor, the U.S. government completes a year, 1941, where only 8% pay. And so in 1942, they employed the Walt Disney Company to do a theater short, a cartoon short starring Donald Duck, in order to urge Americans to file and pay income tax. They ran that, they spent $80,000, which was a princely sum in today's dollars, today's devalued currency that the government also, unfortunately, is manipulating. Down, down, down. Well, $80,000 was a princely sum in those days, and they rushed this thing into all the theaters. And there was Donald Duck having an argument with his radio. The radio was saying, "There's a war going on. You must." It's talking to him. You know, you have to pay. Come on. All Americans should pay a tax, and you should be one of those guys too. You should send in your bacon fat to the war effort. Send in your recycled aluminum, tinfoil, and your automotive tires. Don't buy tires for your car. And please send in tax. So they're urging Donald Duck, and of course, for 18 out of the 20 minutes, he's resisting, as Donald Duck always does. Resisting good sense, and finally he agrees. Yeah, I think I will. And look, the radio is making it easy for me to fill out my form. Well, he sends in his tax, and he's so happy. And at the end, of course, there's this call to arms, something like taxes to beat the Axis, you know, something like that. Very militant, militaristic type of tone to it. And you know, I studied this. I learned what happened with that same congressional record. I learned that in that year, 1942, at the height of World War II, with the nation clearly in the greatest danger ever from Hitler and Tojo and so forth, 1942, when the war was by no means won, when Hitler was triumphant and Japan ruled all of East Asia, at that point, income tax filings went up from 8% all the way up to 38%. All the way up to 38%. In other words, still a decided minority. I'm going to supplement that with a couple more things. The IRS doesn't want to hear that there is a definition for the word income. There's a definition for the word wages, and that you are taxable on the income that you earn from, that's in quotations, a defined term in the statute is income. The income that you earn on defined term, quote unquote, wages. These are common usage terms, but in the statute, if a term is defined, then that term takes on the definition that the statute gives it, not the ordinary definition. And Pete realized that income and wages and many other terms are defined, and therefore he searched the code and he found out what those definitions meant, and they didn't apply to him, or you, or me. Well, so in that context, we have an IRS which is demanding that its understanding of the term wages and income and this stuff should all be taxed. It's that only its definition applies, and they are just so much more knowledgeable than you and me. They're so much more educated than you and me, and they have so much more power than you, and you'd better listen. Well, this same IRS lost in every court that they were exposed to. They lost on a word definition, a simple word definition. They lost on a definition relating to the telephone excise tax that they had been collecting illicitly ever since the Spanish-American War. In that Spanish-American War, a tax was passed to support that war effort in 1898. A 2-year tax, which then got just extended by default. They just kept collecting it. And that was a tax on telephone calls. The newfangled telephone in the year 1898 was a luxury, and they made a tax to support the war effort, and the tax was based on, they could do an excise tax on telephonic traffic that was wherever the telephone company charged based on distance rings and elapsed time of the call. High-powered lawyers working for very rich U.S. corporations realized in about the year 2002 that they were illicitly collecting this tax because there are no more distance rings.